From car cemeteries to boats left on lava rocks, here are 10 abandoned vehicles with jaw-dropping backstories. The McDonald's Barge. In 1986, the Mc Barge was introduced to the world, also known as the Friendship 500. It was a floating fast food restaurant created specifically for the World Expo of 1986 in Vancouver, Canada. It was a brave idea from McDonald's, who hoped to serve their famous burgers on a boat to hundreds of hungry customers. And while it did work very well during the expo, selling tons and tons of fast food items to hungry tourists, it quickly lost its relevance once the World Expo was over. Interestingly, this was not the first floating barge McDonald's ever built. Their first floating restaurant was actually in St. Louis, Missouri. It was built as a nod to the steamboat era of years past, and while it is a cool idea, it didn't really pan out. The Canadian McDonald's Barge was way too expensive to keep afloat. The plan was to take the floating McDonald's around the world, but clearly that didn't happen. It was eventually abandoned and left to rot. It has remained abandoned ever since 1991, and while the Mc Barge has shifted owners a few times, nobody has actually done anything with this floating disaster. The owner that bought it in 1999 said it was going to restore the ship with a $3 million upgrade, but that hasn't happened yet. The website for that project is no longer available. Currently, there are proposals of turning the Mc Barge into a floating homeless shelter. It might become another bar or restaurant too. In 2015, the owner announced it would be reopened as a seafood restaurant once a high-traffic area was figured out. Not sure what's going on now in 2020. The Corpac Wreck. The most picturesque abandoned boat in the entire world is known as the Corpac Wreck. This is a photographer's dream boat, no pun intended. What makes this so incredibly amazing is that it's in a dried riverbed near Fort William in Scotland and overlooks Ben Nevis, the largest mountain in the entire country. It's been sitting there for over 10 years, attracting tourists from all over the world to take beautiful photographs of the lake, the boat, the town in the distance, and the mountain towering above it all. It's actually a pretty amazing sight to behold. But how did this random vessel become moored in such a strange place? Well, the wreck is actually known as the MV Dayspring. It was built first in 1975 as a fishing vessel, but in 2000 it stopped fishing. It was moored in the area of Fort William, then it was caught in a storm in 2011 and ended up in the place where you see it now. Since then, it has quietly been waiting for rescue. For the foreseeable future, it looks like this abandoned vessel will remain an iconic landmark for tourists to visit. Sweden's abandoned car cemetery. Nothing screams abandoned vehicles quite like a car cemetery. It's always a strange experience to find hundreds of rotting vehicles from days past sitting in an otherwise beautiful forest. The abandoned car cemetery in Sweden is slowly being reclaimed by nature. This incredible graveyard of cars was at one point a hotspot for spare parts. Apparently, people would come from all over the region just to get cheap spare parts for their vehicles. The graveyard itself is located in Värmland, Sweden, but it's not such a great reserve for spare parts anymore. Most of the vehicles in this graveyard were abandoned sometime in the 1940s and the 1960s, making most of the parts useless by now. Plus, everything is so horribly damaged and eaten by nature that it would not even be worth it. However, this is an exciting place to visit. The cars are old, covered in moss, and most of them have trees now growing inside of them. The rumor is that many of the cars belong to the United States military, but were abandoned once the soldiers left the continent after World War II. However, this is only a rumor. And now for number 8, but first be sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know if you've ever seen any of these in the comments below. Rusty abandoned ship. Everybody loves an abandoned ship. There's just something so cool about finding an abandoned ship half sunken in the water, as if the entire crew had turned to ghosts overnight. In the Fraser River, there has been an abandoned ship sitting on the water for many years now, and it's become an eyesore for the local people of the area. According to an article from CBC News, the abandoned vessel is a real risk of pollution because its hull is so corroded. It could sink at any minute, and it could even burst into flames. But I kinda like this boat. It's 75 years old, and it has been sitting in the same location of the Fraser River for the last 5 years. This is an incredibly old vessel, and nobody knows quite what to do with it. To remove the entire ship safely would cost the Canadian Coast Guard about $3.3 million. While the costs are supposed to be deflected to the owner in the case of something like this, it's doubtful that whoever owns the boat and left it to rot in the middle of the river is going to pay up $3.3 million to have it removed. If you're in the area of Surrey, BC, definitely check out this cool ghost ship just kinda relaxing in the Fraser River before it's gone. Abandoned Volkswagen camper. I don't know too many people who have not at least once held dreams of living in a camper, constantly living on the road, living in nature, and living a free life. And nothing captures this dream better than the 1979 Volkswagen camper van. But even though this is a serious dream for a lot of people, it's also a failed dream. Take this Volkswagen camper, for example. It had been sitting abandoned in a field for years, likely the byproduct of a failed life journey. but it was moved in 2020 to Skipton in the United Kingdom. A local businessman transformed the abandoned camper van into a moving monument to the city in an attempt to boost tourism in the area during COVID-19. According to the man who purchased the camper van, Andrew Meir, the van only had about 40,000 kilometers on it. Still, it was in terrible condition. He had to fix it up, then give the van an incredible makeover. It's now decorated with beautiful graphics that show famous landmarks of Skipton, such as Skipton Castle, High Street House, and the small UK town's cobbled streets. And yes, it still runs. Soviet MD-160 Ekranoplan. A lot of people think the Boeing 747 is one of the largest planes in the world, and while that may be true, the MD-160 is way bigger. It's like the difference between an elephant and a pig. The aircraft was built as part of a Soviet program back in the 1980s. It worked by using a cushion of air beneath its wings to speed over the surface of the ocean at about 13 feet, making it super hard to detect. It basically skimmed the surface, however the technology was a little bit bizarre and it never really took off. But you can now see one of these incredible Soviet planes from the 1980s sitting abandoned on the shore of the Caspian Sea. It had been neglected ever since the 1990s in an old Soviet naval base, but it was recently hauled out of the naval base, towed for 14 hours across the Caspian Sea, and left beached on the shore as a very cool tourist attraction. This airplane looks like some kind of weird futuristic spacecraft from a bad sci-fi movie, but it's very real, and it's now totally free to look at sitting on the shores on northern Russia. Abandoned cruise ship. The MS Lord Selkirk II was once a beautiful ferry. However, after the owners went bankrupt about 25 years ago, they abandoned it. They left the boat in the Red River, quit the whole situation, and left the city of Selkirk to share their ridiculous costs of removing the ferry. The boat had at one point been used as an excursion vessel to take people up and down the Red River. It was built in 1969, and during its major days, it would take about 130 passengers up and down the river and around Lake Winnipeg on expensive excursions. But obviously, they weren't expensive enough as the owners went bankrupt. It costed $400,000 for the city to remove and dispose of this neglected ferry, but the mayor of the town said it was well worth it to get rid of such an ugly eyesore. Abandoned cocaine plane. How much cocaine can you fit in a single airplane? The answer is about $14 million worth. Recently, the Mexican military discovered a small abandoned airplane on a secret airstrip that contained about $14 million in cocaine. For those who don't typically purchase that much at one time, it's about 358 kilograms of cocaine divided between 10 massive bags. According to the Daily Mail, no arrests were made as the small plane had been abandoned when it was found. The only question is, what kind of lunatic would abandon such a valuable aircraft? It all started when intelligence reports revealed suspicious activity in the southern state of Chiapas, which is on the border with Guatemala. A team was then deployed by helicopter, a secret runway was found, and on this secret runway, there sat an abandoned airplane absolutely full of cocaine. They also found 14 canisters of jet fuel and 2 abandoned motorcycles. Abandoned trailers of the Salton Sea. One of the coolest places in California is the Salton Sea, but don't let the name confuse you, it's not much of an ocean. This is a desert oasis that has been attracting vacationers, nomadic people, RV enthusiasts, and roving tribes of tourists for years. And even though the Salton Sea has lost its relevance, many of the trailers that had once inhabited the strange plain still remain abandoned today. The Salton Sea is located in the south of California. It was created by accident in 1905 when heavy rain and irrigation canals diverted the Colorado River into the previously bone-dry Salton area, creating a small lake. The lake was salty and below sea level, but it didn't stop a development boom from happening, building marinas, resorts, and even trailer parks. But by the late years of the 1950s, an increase of population, a reduction in visitors, and a putrid smell basically ran everyone off. Now, there are only a few abandoned trailers still sitting in the area, most of them heavily graffitied and heavily pillaged. In fact, the Salton Sea looks like a disturbing version of post-apocalyptic 1955. This is what California would have looked like if the bombs had dropped. Abandoned lava boat. There are not too many places on Earth where people abandon boats on lava rocks. This abandoned boat comes to us from Hawaii. At the time the photos were taken back in 2018, the boat was sitting in a lava field on the side of the highway. The boat was covered with graffiti, it was very clearly left abandoned, and it wasn't very close to any water. According to a news report, the vessel had been dumped on the side of the highway for no apparent reason. The vessel had no identifying marks on it. There was no information about who owned it, but it sure made for a great target for graffiti. Classic disses were painted on the side, such as "Yo Mama" and "Whose boat is this boat?" It even looks like someone tried to paint SpongeBob SquarePants on the inside roof of the boat. In any case, the vessel was eventually removed and Hawaii is safe once again, its lava fields at peace. Which of these interesting abandoned vehicles would you like to visit if you ever got the chance? From Armenian astrological wonders to ancient batteries from Baghdad, here are 10 mysterious artifacts scientists can't explain. Girolamo Sagato's corpse petrification. Girolamo Sagato was a serious fan of mummification, and after taking a long trip to Egypt in 1818, decided that preserving bodies was his calling. Mummification occurs when as much water is taken out of the body as possible before it is wrapped in cloth, but Sagato wondered if he could turn the process around and add a special liquid to the body to petrify it. The outcome was terrifying, but very good at keeping bodies looking like they've been turned to stone immediately after death. He worked on heads, breasts, elbows, and the bodies of infants, all of which had been injected with some kind of serum. Researchers also know that Sagato injured his serum very soon after death, as it had to travel through the veins for its proper effect. Though Sagato's work would have been seminal in the field of body preservation, he chose to keep his notes a secret to the public, who, at the time, believed it was the work of Egyptian magic. His technique died with him, and to this day, no one has been able to reproduce it. Blood of San Gennaro. San Gennaro is Italian for Saint Generius, who was the bishop of Benevento. Little is known about his life except that on a visit to Paciuli in Naples, he was arrested and sentenced to death in 305 AD for his Christian faith. Here the story deviates. Some say he was thrown into a cage with lions, but they knelt at his feet instead of killing him. Others say he walked out of the furnace that was meant to kill him with no burns. At the end of these legends, the saint is beheaded and a Christian woman collects some of his blood in a container. The blood of the saint is mysterious because of its ability to liquefy even today in the presence of saints and 3 times a year. How exactly such old blood can continue to harden and liquefy 1800 years later is unexplained. Additionally, the blood failing to liquefy has coincided with many calamities and disasters, including a plague in 1527 and the 1980 Irpinia earthquake that killed 2,500 people and left 250,000 homeless. San Gennaro's blood failed to liquefy at the end of 2016, which is a bad omen for Naples in 2017. Lake Winnipesauke Mystery Egg. We've got a historical doozy for this pick. The famous mystery stone found at Lake Winnipesauke in 1872. A businessman named Seneca Ladd was having a fence post put in at Meredith, the New Hampshire town near the legendary lake. There, his workmen discovered a truly bizarre object inside a lump of clay that to this day has not received a satisfactory explanation. Shaped like an egg, it's approximately 4 inches long and 2.5 inches in height. Some say it's comparable to a goose egg. It's made from a rock called quartzite, which is created when pure quartz sandstone gets subjected to high levels of heat and pressure. This means it's also substantial given its fairly small size at a weight of 1.2 pounds. So the shape and material are weird enough in themselves. But it's what is on the surface of the artifact that arguably draws the most attention. 8 things are curved onto the 4 sides of the object. These include a face, what appears to be a crescent moon, a deer's leg, and also a teepee plus an ear of corn. That's led some to connect the egg to Native American practices, believing the object is referring to some kind of peace treaty. Another intriguing thing about the mystery object is how it's been bored through from end to end by what seems to be a variety of tools. Why was this done? There's been speculation that the holes enable the egg to be placed on a stake, but for what reason? Apparently, this created a territorial line. Seneca Ladd was very proud of the find his men made. He had a little museum display at the bank where he worked. Sounds like an eccentric place to keep your money, right? And he placed the object in a case there. Was he right to be such a show-off about it? Another line of thought is that the stone egg was made around the time it was discovered, rather than being some ancient relic of a long time past. The workmanship suggests late 19th century tools were used to fashion this glorious mystery item. And with that, we're gonna lay that one to rest. Sorry, we've cracked. And now for number 7, but first, have you subscribed yet? If not, we'd love to have you here and let us know what your favorite discovery is in the comments below. Carahunge. Ancient stones are among the greatest puzzles for archaeologists. Aside from details such as carvings, inscriptions, or holes, there's very little to go on regarding chunks of rock that are thousands of years old. Carahunge is a definite case in point. Located in South Armenia in the Syunik province, it's a stone circle to rival England's legendary Stonehenge. Carahunge, which means speaking stones, has been referred to as the Armenian Stonehenge, not to be confused with Carahunge. Comprised of 223 stones that are arranged in a circle, it came to the modern world's attention in 1984 and has been a source of speculation ever since. There's major disagreements over what the site was used for back in the day. Believed to be in the region of 7,500 years old, one group claims it's an ancient observatory. This seems to be due to many of the stones featuring holes that could be aligned to the heavens. Another group say that's a load of historical hooey. For them, Carahunge represents a settlement of some kind, possibly part of a city wall. These groups reportedly agreed to work together late last year. Though we're thinking COVID-19 has probably thrown a big spanner in the works. One thing's for sure, the facts about Carahunge are not set in stone. Bighorn medicine wheel. Medicine wheels are an important part of Native American tradition and ritual. One incredible example is the Bighorn medicine wheel in Wyoming. It's in the Bighorn National Forest, but you can't miss it. Just look for an 82-foot wide formation of white limestone. This wheel is the biggest of its kind in North America. Inside the wheel are 28 spokes and also 7 carons or circles. A large caron occupies the center of the wheel and there are 6 smaller ones around it. Bighorn is a sacred spot. Various tribes like the Crow, Lakota Sioux, and Blackfoot go to the wheel in order to take part in ceremonies and vision quests where contact is made with the spirits. The big questions, of course, are who made the wheel in the first place and what is its ultimate purpose. Native Americans say the spot has been visited for 7,000 years. Analysis was made on some of the wood in one of the carons, revealing a possible date of 1760 CE going by the tree rings. Others claim the wheel is an observatory. Another one? What is it about ancient artifacts and observatories? Am I right? Jade Cylinder. China has some of the most fascinating ancient history on the planet. A lot of stuff we take for granted now has its origins with the Chinese and their ingenuity. But as with any long-standing country, new details are waiting to be uncovered, which is where this dude comes in. Carved onto the side of a Kong, or Jade Cylinder, he's pulling one heck of a face while riding some type of ancient creature. The world found out about the cylinder through a BBC series that was filming in China last year. It's square-shaped, but inside there's a kind of tube. The cylinder weighs a reported 6.5 kilograms. So what is the real story behind this artifact and its dramatic depiction of a man in a headdress with his monster? We know it was found in a cemetery belonging to a society called the Langshu from late Neolithic times, 3rd millennium BC. The cemetery was built for what are described as elite members of the Langshu. It definitely looks like there was a sophisticated culture living here with other fascinating artifacts being uncovered. That calls into question the status of a group called the Shang from the 2nd millennium BC, who are thought to be the country's oldest dynasty. As for the mystery rider and monster, they could be connected to the figure of the Taoshi, a figure with bulging eyes who appears on artifacts from the Shang dynasty. Whoever they are, this find potentially changes the game for Chinese history. London Hammer. Here's a puzzling artifact from ancient times that might not be what it seems. There has been much debunking of the so-called London Hammer or London artifact, but what's the story behind it? We'll tell the tale and let you decide for yourselves. For starters, the object was not found in London, England, but London, Texas. Back in the 1930s, a couple called the Hans were out for a walk in the area of Red Creek. Passing a ledge by a waterfall, they noticed a loose rock nodule and decided to take it home. The nodule had some wood protruding from it. When their son cracked it open years later, they saw it was a handle attached to a hammer embedded in the rock. Curious, but hardly a major mystery, they probably thought. That all changed decades later in the 1980s when the young Earth creationist Carl Baugh bought the nodule. He believed the tools were evidence of ancient and advanced technology. How so? Because the rock at Red Creek dates back thousands of years. Sounds intriguing, right? The reason this idea is unlikely, however, is that Baugh assumed the nodule was part of the original rock. For some, the hammer is actually embedded in a 19th century concretion formed from minerals and evaporating water. Still, it's cool to think the hammer might be evidence of an unknown and advanced civilization, huh? Face from Cape and Rage. This strange object was found at Cape and Rage, New Brunswick, Canada in 1998. Kinda looks like a melted chess piece, doesn't it? It's carved from bone. The mandible of a white deer to be precise. Knowing that makes it rather gruesome, but then lots of things were made from bones in ancient times, right? Who exactly is this 5-centimeter high fella? Going back to the place where he was found, he does not look so much enraged as downright spooked. Dr. David Black, the man who studied the artifact, got a surprise when the Cape and Rage face landed on his desk. That's cause the person who discovered it was not a professor or anyone like that, but a lucky anthropology student. Dr. Black concluded that the artifact was approximately half a century old and was probably made by an Aboriginal person. The supernatural nature of the object suggests it had a spiritual significance perhaps. Could it have been property of a healer or someone like that? Interestingly, archaeology on a shoreline is limited, as obviously the sea will wash a lot of stuff away. So whatever it is, this is one fascinating little find. Baghdad Battery. Could what we know as a battery have been invented a couple of thousand years earlier than we thought? That's the idea behind the so-called Baghdad Battery, a 2,200-year-old artifact discovered in Iraq 1938. From the outside, it looks like a terracotta pot. Inside, however, is a whole different story. 5.5 inches high and 3 inches wide, it reveals possible evidence of advanced tech. How so? The jar contains a rolled-up copper sheet. At the top is a plug made of asphalt that holds it in, and there's asphalt and a copper disc at the bottom of the roll. Completing the unusual design is an iron rod which goes through the plug and into the sheet, though it does not come into contact with it. Wilhelm Koenig, an archaeologist from Germany, stumbled upon the jar. He reckoned it was an early form of battery. We know the battery was invented by Galvani and Volta, though this was 2,000 years after the jar was produced. If the jar is a battery, then it would likely have been filled with lemon juice or vinegar or something acidic, creating a mild current of 1 to 2 volts through the connections. What was the electricity used for? Medical treatments, electroplating, as in the coating of objects on the metal? Some think Koenig is mistaken and that the jar is in fact just a plain old storage vessel for papyrus. Responses to the theory have been both positive and negative. Get it? Wow, that joke was a shocker. AntiCatha Mechanism. Many of you probably know about this already, but this mechanism continues to amaze scientists and historians alike. This super curious object was discovered in a Roman shipwreck in 1901. It appears to contain a group of over 30 bronze gears, all interacting with each other, leading archaeologists to name it as the world's first analog computer. The device was being transferred from Rhodes to Rome for a parade led by Julius Caesar. Made from a combination of bronze and wood, shaped like a shoebox, it was pretty corroded. Experts took a long time getting around to investigate it. When they finally did peek inside using X-rays, they were amazed at what they saw. Called the AntiCatha Mechanism after the Greek island in whose waters it was found, it revealed itself as a kind of astronomical calendar. It featured stuff like dates on the Egyptian calendar together with signs of the zodiac. The mechanism is still rather mysterious. It appears to be operated by working the gears with a hand crank and consulting a dial on the front which points to specific days. Through this, ancient people could calculate how the year was going to play out in terms of lunar cycles and whatnot. But who built it? The mechanism looks like it comes from either the 1st or 2nd century BCE. Is it a fortune-telling device? Is it a rudimentary computer? No one can establish what purpose this little box actually serves. The biggest mystery is how the ancient Greeks could design such a complicated device in 205 BC when similar devices could not be recreated until the mechanical church clocks of Western Europe 1500 years later. This and the device's incredibly refined design leads archaeologists to believe that this mechanism was not the first of its kind and perhaps another may be discovered in the future. From discarded Stone Age artifacts to the disturbing remnants of a brutal World War I battle, here are 10 of the strangest things found frozen in ice. Hidden treasure. Everyone wants to find hidden treasure. Unfortunately, this is something that doesn't normally happen, but in 2013, an anonymous mountain climber stumbled upon a small box that contained 100 precious jewels, including emeralds, rubies, and sapphires. A mountain climber, can you believe it? According to a report by the BBC, the small box that this mountain climber found was worth roughly $300,000. The man found the box frozen in the ice on Mont Blanc in France, but the story gets even crazier. Apparently, the box actually came from an Air India flight that crashed on the very same mountain way back in January of 1966. The crash took the lives of 117 passengers, but not everything was recovered because it had crashed so high up in the mountains. While bits of the wreckage had been found over the years, the box of jewels had remained hidden frozen in the ice for over 50 years. That's really sad. But what makes this story really extraordinary is that the mountain climber actually turned the jewels over to the authorities. He found a box of actual jewels and simply walked up to a police officer and gave it back. What do you think? Was he honest or foolish? And what would you have done in his place? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. If you liked this video, there are many more where it came from. You won't want to miss out. Iron Age artifacts. Global warming is having some pretty strange effects on the Earth. With all this ice melting, so many artifacts that were previously lost are now being revealed. Some of these artifacts are from as far back as the Iron Age. It has been reported that with Norway's glaciers quickly melting, archaeologists have found over 2,000 artifacts alone from the Iron Age, thawed out of the ice. The artifacts range dramatically from simple tools to lost robes, and the reason the area is so densely populated by artifacts is because it was once a popular thoroughfare for ancient humans. This was at a time when people would cross back and forth over the mountains, moving their livestock depending on the changes of the seasons. While most of the artifacts have been pretty standard items such as arrowheads and horseshoes, scientists have found more interesting things like mittens and even a tunic that was dated back to between AD 230 and AD 390. Supposedly, the tunic was found wadded up and covered in ancient horse manure. As you may have guessed, it looks like our ancient ancestors didn't care much about leaving their litter in the road. Fish eating fish. Some things found in the ice are strange, some of them are scientifically outstanding, and some are just fun. A recent discovery by two brothers who were fishing in Wawasee Lake in Indiana has taken the internet by storm. These two brothers found a fish frozen in the ice right in the middle of its meal. I'm not sure how it happened, but it looks like the temperature dropped just as the fish was about to take a bite out of another fish. There is even video footage showing what they found. It appears to be a pike in the middle of chomping down on a bait. This is one of those things you really wouldn't believe unless you saw the video. The best explanation that has been given is that the pike choked on the bass while trying to stuff it down its throat and then died, and then later on both fish were eventually frozen solid. Talk about biting off more than you can chew. This is definitely a cautionary tale to all the fish and all the people out there who have eyes bigger than their stomachs. Lake Vostok. Lake Vostok is another example of the incredible landscapes buried beneath the ice of Antarctica. Back in 2012, a team of Russian scientists drilled through about 2 miles, 3 kilometers of ice and found something quite unexpected. Rather than drilling into more ice, scientists discovered Lake Vostok, the biggest subglacial lake on the continent. And yes, it seems like something that should not exist. A liquid lake frozen beneath miles of ice seems a little fishy, but it's actually pretty normal in Antarctica. What is really extraordinary about Lake Vostok is that it has been completely isolated for millions of years encased in the ice. And after scientists analyzed samples from the water, they found bacteria totally unlike any other we are familiar with. This is a little disturbing, as many people fear if they continue to extract unknown bacteria that has been frozen in the ice for millions of years, scientists could unwittingly unleash the next plague that sweeps across the earth and kills billions of people. If it were up to me, I would urge them to stop drilling just to be safe. What do you think though? Could there be a super pandemic lurking in a time capsule from millions of years ago under the Antarctic ice cap? Let me know in a comment. Graveyard of the fish lizards. Dinosaurs are always one of the most exciting parts of scientific history. You know it, I know it, everyone knows it. Of course, ice dinosaurs sound even cooler. Every dinosaur find is exciting in its own way, but a recent Cretaceous graveyard discovery perfectly preserved inside of a glacier down in Chile is an absolutely astonishing find. According to Live Science, international researchers at the Torre del Paine National Park in Chile uncovered 46 fully complete specimens of Cretaceous animals known as ichthyosaurs. These bizarre creatures lived between 100 and 150 million years ago and were a bizarre mix of lizard and fish. Think about a crocodile mixed with a dolphin. These were some seriously bizarre creatures with insatiable hunger. The largest of all the skeletons were discovered to be more than 16 feet, 5 meters in length. That is way longer than your average dolphin. Not only were their fossils discovered, but because of how well preserved the fish lizards were in the glacier, scientists even discovered soft tissue and embryos. The researchers believe it was a massive accident that ended up burying these creatures in sediment, and then the glacier would have frozen over them. It could have been that the entire group of fish lizards were caught in an avalanche. As an interesting side note, the ichthyosaurs actually went extinct during the global depletion of oxygen, a terrifying event that wiped out a lot of the species on Earth even before the famous meteor strike wiped out the dinosaurs. Otzi the Iceman. There's nothing stranger to find frozen in the ice than an actual human person. His name is Otzi, and he was discovered by two hikers when they were on holiday in Austria in 1991. When they first discovered the man frozen in ice, the two holiday makers reported him as being the victim of a mountaineering accident, but they had no clue that the man that they had just discovered was extremely ancient. Radiocarbon dating places Otzi at being frozen somewhere around 3300 BCE. For those who don't want to do the math, that's about 5300 years ago, making Otzi a very real frozen caveman. Since his discovery in 1991, Otzi has been studied a lot. It turns out that he has somewhere around 19 relatives currently living in Austria, with a bloodline passed down through 5,000 years. Studies also showed that he had a pretty rough time when alive. He suffered from gallstones, gum disease, frostbite, and he likely had Lyme disease. But he also had a lot in common with us. Apparently, Otzi was covered in tattoos. He even carried with him some souvenirs. Alongside his body was found an axe that was carried all the way from Tuscany, hundreds of miles from the spot where he crawled into a cave and died. It looks like our ancient ancestors were much closer to us than we may have thought. Warriors of the White War. One of the most brutal battles fought in World War I, or in fact in any war ever, was known as the White War, and it happened high up in the Italian Alps with temperatures that were way below freezing. As reported by Daily Mail, the fighting in the Alps went on for more than 3 years and killed over 1 million people, but because of the frozen conditions, the bodies were mostly lost to the ice. However, hot summers in northern Italy are causing the ice up in the Alps to melt, and this is causing the mummified bodies of soldiers to be revealed throughout the landscape. Basically, every time there is a hot summer, more and more bodies are found mummified who had died in the brutal 3-year campaign. What makes this story even more disturbing is that archaeologists must act very quickly to procure the bodies, but not for a reason you might think. You see, opportunistic thieves have been coming across the bodies and looting them of any potential souvenirs. This takes robbing the dead to a whole new degree of disgraceful. The Grasshopper Glacier. Montana is famous for more than just its delicious food. In this state, you can find some of the most beautiful glaciers and ice fields in the world, and you will also find a place known as Grasshopper Glacier, an enormous glacier over a mile long, 1.5 kilometer, and a half a mile, 0.75 kilometers wide. It's located outside Cook City and is absolutely ripe with millions and millions of frozen grasshoppers. In an analysis of some grasshopper specimens taken from the glacier in 1914, scientists confirmed that the grasshopper species had already been extinct for about 200 years. Scientists think that the swarm had been passing through the mountains when they were caught in a dangerous snowstorm. The grasshoppers then died and were subsequently frozen inside the glacier, where they have stayed ever since. If you're a person who has lived in the American Midwest or even in the prairies, you will know how big of a nuisance grasshoppers and locusts can be. They are much better off frozen in ice than ruining crops. At least these ones can contribute to science. Hidden mountains. If you try to picture Antarctica in your mind, you will probably picture a flat landscape of frozen ice and snow. But this is actually an optical illusion. Buried beneath the countless miles of ice are all kinds of incredible features. One of the most impressive is an enormous mountain range almost completely submerged by ice. It's known as the Gamburtsev Mountains, and scientists have known about it for quite some time. The mountain range is buried under roughly 1 mile of ice, and so it's obviously been a little hard to study. However, according to Live Science, recent advances in our imaging technology have allowed scientists to look beneath the ice, and they were extremely surprised to discover not just one mountain range, but a series of mountains with peaks that rose to be upwards of 10,000 feet high. The mountains sprawl for about 750 miles, but the impressive range is almost completely invisible hidden beneath the ice. Now that's a mountain range no climber will ever conquer. Anthrax Outbreak. The number one discovery from under the ice is surprisingly quite similar to the bacteria entombed in Lake Vostok. In 2016, a terrible heat wave thawed a lot of the ice in western Siberia. With the ice thawed, many buried secrets were revealed. One of the more dangerous finds was a reindeer carcass that had been frozen for at least several decades. According to CNN, this reindeer had been infected with anthrax at the time of its death. Almost immediately after the infected reindeer was thawed from the ice, about 1,200 reindeer living in the area quickly perished. Scientists think that the reindeer died because of the infected carcass, but also passed on the anthrax to roughly 15,000 nomadic people in the area. This was no minor outbreak. Around 40 people were hospitalized because of symptoms of anthrax. This wasn't any normal anthrax either. According to news sources, it was weaponized anthrax. The Russian government had to dispatch biological warfare specialists to contain the outbreak. This is just another cautionary tale of what happens when an unknown virus, or in this case old anthrax, thaws from the ice. Even an accident could have major worldwide repercussions. What happens if the plague comes back? Humanity itself could be at risk.
Hi everybody! From pups that were originally trained to hunt lions to majestic protectors that herd livestock, here are 9 of the best guard dog breeds in the world. Bull Mastiff. Bull Mastiffs are large dogs, weighing up to 130 pounds, and they put this weight to good use in protecting their families. In fact, they were pretty much bred to guard those that they cared for, but the combination of this breed's appearance, including its ears and deep eyes, make it clear that you're looking into an intelligent animal. These factors mean that you can rely on a Bull Mastiff to keep your family safe. They have come to be known as the gamekeeper's night dog, and for good reason. In the 19th century, these dogs were bred to protect the land around huge aristocratic mansions, which often contained lots of game. This made them the prime target for poachers. The Bull Mastiff was the perfect combination to scare these poachers away. Given that they were bred to keep others out, they can be a little fearful and aloof around strangers, but they're so relaxed around their families that they're even well poised to be a guard dog for an apartment. Crazy to think that a dog this big could do so well in an apartment, huh? Staffordshire Bull Terrier. If you need a great guard dog, but you just don't have enough room for one of the bigger breeds, then the Staffordshire Bull Terrier is definitely the dog for you. They tend to only clock in at around 40 pounds, but if you look at them, you can see that they're built with an incredibly muscular frame. You might even call them buff. But if you look into its puppy dog eyes, then you'll know you have a friend for life. The Staffordshire Bull Terrier has a pretty rough history. However, during the 18th and early 19th centuries, dog fighting was pretty popular around England. People would go to these fights and bet on which dog would win. These gamblers bred together bulldogs and various terriers to create the Staffordshire Bull Terrier, which is a pretty fearless breed. Thankfully, they made it through the years and were further bred with care to create a very loving puppy. But that doesn't mean that they did away with all of their admirably athletic traits. They're still very courageous, but they're more frisky than combative nowadays, even if they look like they're gym rats. They've also learned to trust and love people over the years, and they're super friendly with kids. And now for number 7, but first, do you have any of these breeds? Tell me about your dog in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Polley. You'd never think it, but the heavily dreaded Polley breed is actually super effective as a guard dog. However, the first thing you're inclined to notice when you look at them are those luscious locks of corded hair. In fact, when they're sitting down, they look more like a mop than a dog. However, given the Polley's history, these dogs are excellent at working together with humans toward a common goal, so they're great as guard dogs. The Pollock, plural for Polley, have been around for quite some time. Most experts think that a nomadic group from Asia named the Magyars brought the breed to Europe from their home, and these dogs were integral to the Magyars' living arrangements. The Pollock were bred to herd sheep around the plains of Hungary. But it gets pretty cold in Hungary, hence the development of their heavy coat of hair. This coat is actually distinctive among all dog breeds. Their undercoat is a heavy layer meant to keep them warm, whereas their outer coat of hair is shaggy and dreads after they grow up. But these pups aren't out to impress anyone, because they know they're good at what they do. Through years of developing their herding skills and intelligence, they'll make an excellent addition to your home and will guard it well. Boxer. Boxers are some of the most beloved dogs in the world. They're known for their spirited and bubbly personalities, and I would say they're quite handsome pups. But don't underestimate them on the basis of their qualities. They're also incredibly loyal and willing to do anything for their facilities. Since they're so jolly and loyal, they're recognized as being some of the best dogs for kids. They know how to keep everyone safe. In terms of their history, boxers are pretty young. Some estimates place their origins at somewhere around the beginning of the 20th century. They were bred by German dog breeders from a bigger breed named Bullenbeißer, which is German for bullbiter, since they were often used to hunt big animals like bison in aristocratic hunting games, but thankfully, at least we got the sleeker and kinder boxer out of these games. The boxer has some other positive qualities to boot. They're pretty easy to take care of, requiring very little in the way of grooming. Their affectionate qualities also extend outside of their families. They're pretty people-loving, unless they're threatened. However, they don't respond well to overly severe training, so make sure to be gentle with them. They will listen and learn. Doberman. Dobermans look sharp, When they notice that something's going on, they'll perk their ears straight up into the air. This lets you know they are completely aware of their surroundings, and what's more, they can take this awareness and combine it with their large, muscular frames to protect their families. That's why these Doberman pinschers are known worldwide for being excellent guard dogs. Dobermans were initially bred by a German man named Louis Doberman, a tax collector in Apolda. Since people didn't take too kindly to having their taxes collected, Louis decided it might be in his best interest to breed a dog to protect him on his roots. And wouldn't you know it, he accomplished his task, breeding the Doberman into the dog that we all know and love today. Now, they don't only guard tax collectors, but everyone else. They're used both in therapy and in various workforces. Since they were bred to protect particular people, these dogs are excellent guard dogs, but this also means that they have a lot of pent-up energy, meaning that if you're going to get one, you'll need to keep it active, and they'll try to take over the role as the household leader if you aren't careful. Make sure to train them well from the get-go. Akita. Akitas are pretty big dogs, sometimes weighing up to 130 pounds. Moreover, their heavy coats of fur make them look even bigger than their already muscular frames would suggest. But Akitas are gentle giants. In fact, in their native homeland of Japan, they're regarded as quite dignified creatures. Indeed, the combination of size, strength, and softness has made them something of a national symbol of courage and work ethic. Akitas have also been around for a long time. They were initially bred sometime around the beginning of the 17th century. As the story goes, the emperor forced an aristocrat into exile in the Akita region. When he arrived, he commanded his underlings to breed a dog for hunting purposes. Through generations of breeding, the Akita came into being. They were good at hunting and did so with attention to detail, often going after boars and occasionally even Yezo bears. Although they were once for royals only, people now know them all over the world, but they still have a distinctive rank for the Japanese. Because of their dignified, fearless nature, combined with their predisposition to hunting, they make excellent family guard dogs. However, know what you're getting into. They shed and drool a lot, and they aren't immediately kind around strangers, but they love their families to death. Rhodesian Ridgeback. The Rhodesian Ridgeback was originally bred to hunt after lions, so it's no wonder that they're so adept at protecting their families from harm. But that's not the only thing that these pups have going for them. Most people recognize the Ridgeback based on the fact that they have a large ridge running down their backs. These dogs are also well known for their athletic frames. If you're going to get one of these, be prepared to keep up with them. The Rhodesian Ridgeback was originally bred in Africa as a mix between a few European hunting breeds and a Khoikhoi breed, which was native to the area. These forces combined led to a breed well adapted to its environment. Not only could it navigate the African terrain without falling prey to its various pests, but it had the hunting instincts to track down whatever was in its way. Because of this, these dogs were put to use in hunting down, but not killing, large game such as lions, bears, and boar. Nowadays, you're not going to see these dogs taking on game like that, although they definitely still have the drive in them. They're very happy with their families and will guard them at all costs, but they still have a free spirit and a tendency to chase after things. But aside from this, their history makes them simultaneously protective and amenable to their family's commands. But only get one if you know what you're doing. They can have a mind of their own. German Shepherd. If you're like me, then one of the first dogs that comes to mind when you think about protection is the German Shepherd. This is definitely no mistake. They've been the quintessential police dog for decades, and it seems that they're heavily predisposed to protecting others, especially their families. They're also quite renowned for being one of the smartest dog breeds in the world. The breed has pretty humble beginnings. German Shepherds descended from a group of German dogs whose purpose was to herd sheep. However, these breeds were pretty disparate from one another. However, in the late 1800s, a group of breeders worked together to breed the German Shepherd. You'd think that the German Shepherd had to go through a bunch of police training to earn its reputation, but actually it got it from herding sheep. But over and above their intelligence and strength, they are known to be incredibly loving towards their families, and even towards strangers. That's why they've been known to protect both the police and the families of which they are a part. In fact, they're so protective that they'll often go into a guarding mode when it's not even called for. But since they're so smart, if you train them to listen to what you say, they'll learn to respond quickly. Rottweiler. Rottweilers are big, and they can be a lot for introductory dog owners to handle, but they're arguably the best breed of guard dog in the world. Given their original breeding purposes, their temperament makes sense. They were originally intended to herd cattle, and sometimes they were even enlisted to help butchers drive heavy carts. They were also some of the first dogs to work with police forces. Even though they've often been depicted in the media as angry and aggressive, most experts say that Rottweilers are super friendly, even if they can be a little bit skittish around other dogs and strangers. When they're with the families, they're eager to help out, and they love spending time with those that they know best. That might be why they're so good at protection. They're so attached to those that they love that they'll guard them at all costs. Rottweilers have held many roles over their long history. They've helped serve the blind, and during disasters, they've been essential at assisting rescue workers navigate dangerous sites, such as during 9/11. You'd expect a dog with such great versatility to have split off into a few different breeds, but somehow the Rottweiler has stayed very much the same over its breeding history. And for good reason, these dogs are excellent at everything they do.
From big military vehicles that were fighting in the hardest battles to legendary sports cars, here are 10 cars found underwater. Jaguar MK2. Jaguars are elegant, luxury cars originally from the UK, and the Jaguar MK2 is a classic car that any serious car enthusiast would be more than thrilled to have in their garage. The Jaguar Mark II was first built in late 1959 to replace the 2.4 and 3.4 liter saloons known as MK1. MK2 was produced until 1967, and it gained a reputation as a good car for law enforcement and criminals, also appearing in many films. One was found in absolutely atrocious condition back in 2019 when a scuba team pulled it out of the Willamette River. While it seems more like a commercial for diving gear, it was found by the guys over at the Adventures with Purpose YouTube channel. Nobody has any idea how long the Jaguar car had been sitting underneath the water near a boat ramp into the river, but it was successfully pulled from the water after a short struggle. However, it did not appear to be worth the effort, as this once beautiful red sports car is now absolutely trashed. There is no way anyone is restoring this vehicle. It is rusted beyond repair, the interior is completely destroyed, the tires are ruined, and so are the wheel wells, and in order to get into the trunk, the team completely ripped it apart with a giant pry bar. Yes, this Jaguar MK2 is a beautiful car that got pulled out of a river, but I don't think anyone is ever driving this car again. If it were me, I think I would have just left it in the river to become a luxury house for some fish. What about you? Chevrolet Silverado. This is a recent one, just a few months into 2020, and the Australian Maritime Safety Authority recovered almost a dozen shipping containers that had been accidentally dumped off of a vessel near the Australian coast in 2018. Among the relatively boring things discovered inside of the containers were a pair of Chevrolet Silverados. These big, heavy-duty diesels would have been sold in Australia, but after 2 years spent submerged in the extremely salty Pacific Ocean, I doubt there are going to be many buyers lining up, probably not even for a steep discount. And that is a real shame, because these are some serious trucks. Chevy Silverados come with impressive Duramax engines and sell for around $134,000 brand new in the land down under. That is nothing to sneeze at. According to an Australian report, the trucks were on their way to be converted from left-hand to right-hand drive. It looks like they will be no-hand drive now. There's not much that can be done to fix 2 years of severe water damage. You can barely fix a flooded engine, never mind a completely flooded truck. Still, this pair of trucks was a pretty cool find at the bottom of the sea. Red Jeep. This is probably the most infamous vehicle ever discovered under the water, and it was not even that deep under the water. Back in Myrtle Beach during Hurricane Dorian, a red Jeep became stuck in the sand and drew a whole lot of attention to it, with video footage and memes sprouting up almost instantly. The Jeep became such a viral sensation that people quickly flocked to the beach to take photographs with it, even climbing onto the Jeep while the storm began to close in, the waves becoming extremely dangerous and the police trying to shut down that area of the beach. But still, the people kept coming and the memes kept being shoveled onto the internet. There was even a point where a man came with a pair of bagpipes and played Amazing Grace as a funeral song for the Jeep. However, the Jeep did survive the night and did not end up being swept all the way out to sea. The actual owner of the red Jeep later came forward and claimed that his cousin had borrowed the vehicle in order to capture video of the sunrise before the storm, but ended up getting stuck. The Jeep was removed soon after the storm, and the Myrtle Beach police even posted a photograph of the backhoe that had to drag the Jeep away. Ford Mustang Mach 1 and Mazda RX-7. This is a 2-for-1 special. You remember number 10 on the list, the guys who dragged the Jaguar MK2 out of the river? Well, these same guys lifted a Mazda RX-7 and a 1973 Ford Mustang Mustang Mach 1 out of another river, this time in Portland, Oregon. Supposedly, there had been rumors of a girl who dumped her boyfriend's car into that same river 20 years prior after she had caught him cheating on her. The story had been the motivation for the team to go down there, and much to their surprise, they ended up finding 6 vehicles submerged underwater. After being submerged for decades, it is safe to say the Mustang is never going to be restored. In fact, the only vehicle they managed to get out of the water was the Mazda RX-7, which was in pretty terrible shape. The windshield was smashed, the entire vehicle was full of muck, and pretty much everything was ruined. Among their discoveries was also a Chevrolet LUV pickup truck, which they surmised could have belonged to the supposed cheating boyfriend. Nobody knows exactly why so many vehicles were dumped into the river in the same location, but it certainly makes for an interesting mystery. Why do you think those cars are underwater? Let me know in the comments below. And if you are new here, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell. Military vehicles. If you happen to be swimming off the coast of Aqaba, you will be surprised to discover an entire collection of underwater military vehicles spread along the ocean floor. There are approximately 19 decommissioned pieces of military hardware sitting 92 feet below the surface of the water, but they aren't there by mistake. They are part of Jordan's first underwater military museum, which includes tanks, a helicopter, and troop carrier vehicles all positioned in battle formation. Currently, they are all sitting patiently in the Red Sea. According to a report by the BBC, Jordan hopes this underwater collection of very cool military vehicles is going to intrigue visiting tourists as a new type of museum experience. Personally, I think it is a waste of perfectly good tanks that I could be driving around my neighborhood. But I will admit, discovering this awesome platoon of war machines in the murky darkness of the Red Sea is such an amazing experience, and that is why if you are at the Red Sea, you shall enjoy this fascinating opportunity. Motorcycle trash. Up north in Canada and Quebec, to be exact, local people were looking to reopen some swimming locations that had been previously closed for almost half a century. The problem was too much trash. Scuba divers went down to the bottom of the St. Lawrence River to try and remove junk as part of a massive cleanup operation that would get the riverbed free of garbage. According to local CTV News, 60 divers went down and worked for an entire day to clean this section of river and remove the trash. What they found on the bottom of the river was a gun, a lot of car tires, a pair of ice skates, a sign for a parking meter, and an entire motorbike. There was also a car down there, but it was too heavy for the divers to drag to the surface. But this isn't the first time a group of divers find a motorcycle underwater. For example, in 1941, the munitions ship SS Thistlegorm was shipwrecked by a German bomber off the coast of Egypt during World War II and lay for decades. It was discovered some years ago, and now it has turned into a world-class diving site. This place is full of amazing machines, and it has well-preserved motorcycles, but the cherries on the top are a couple of rusting Horton 16H that now are home of many fish that swim through their twisted metal. Submarine sports car. Okay, this is not a car that has been found underwater, but it absolutely needed to be on this list anyway. This is known as the Submarine sports car. It is considered the only car on Earth that can drive perfectly underwater and perfectly on land. That's right, this car can literally drive along the bottom of a lake, river, or swimming pool, and it does so beautifully. This incredible sports car comes equipped with an electric motor that allows it to drive 75 miles per hour, 121 kilometers per hour, beneath the surface of the water. That's faster than a lot of vehicles can go on land. I can see why it costs $2 million US. The car itself was inspired by the Sub Lotus from the 1977 James Bond film, The Spy Who Loved Me, and it looks amazing. The sports car is a convertible two-seater that acts just like a proper car when it's on the road, but floats the second it hits water. Then, by switching the lever, the car sinks below the water with you and your passenger safely connected to oxygen. The scuba tanks that are integrated into the car allow 2 people to breathe underwater for up to 1 hour. Talk about a joyride. Obviously, I see some pretty big issues with this car, like what happens if you can't drive back to the surface before your oxygen runs out? But this is more of a novelty than anything, and besides, I'm sure one day the submarine sports car will be stranded at the bottom of the ocean somewhere. What do you say? Would you like to drive it? Where would you go in this car? Let me know in the comments below. Volkswagen Beetle. This one is a little different. Rather than a car being found mysteriously under the water, this Volkswagen Beetle sculpture was lowered there on purpose to become the newest exhibit of a renowned artist's underwater art museum in Cancun, Mexico. This Volkswagen sculpture can be found 26 feet, 8 meters below the surface of the water near Isla Mujeres. The sculpture, which is an exact cement replica of the classic Volkswagen Beetle, has been designed specifically to have lots of nooks for marine life to live in. thereby creating an artificial reef. This is definitely one of the coolest underwater cars that isn't exactly a car that you could ever see. According to the artist, this exhibition is supposed to be an artistic statement about the impact that humans and their technology have been having on our planet's ecosystems. And this is not the only sculpture found in the artist's underwater art museum. The same artist, named Jason DeCaris Taylor, has another 400 plus sculptures in Cancun's National Marine Park. But I have to say, there is only one Volkswagen Beetle sculpture, and it is definitely my favorite. I wonder what future humans will wonder when they discover this curious fossil 10,000 years from now. Train wreck. At the bottom of Lake Superior, along a rather remote stretch of the northern shore, a wreck was discovered unlike anything on this list. The wreck was from 106 years ago when a locomotive carrying a 3-man crew went off track over the mountainside and crashed into the water. The locomotive then remained underneath the waves and was not discovered until just recently. The township of Schreiber was founded in the 1880s as the Canadian Pacific Railway was constructed across the South Zone off Ontario. This was an important place because it was a crew change point for trains. In 1910, a crew of 3 men joined the locomotive 694 of the CPR, who had to pass to the line right beside the Lake Superior. With a rock wall to the left and the lake to their right, the 3-man crew found themselves bearing down on a rock slide dead ahead, strewn across the rails without a chance to avoid a crash. Even though they tried to escape, 2 of their bodies were found in the water, and the body of the fireman was never found. As you can imagine, the train car is in pretty rough condition. After over 100 years submerged, rust has taken its toll on this last locomotive, and while it cannot be raised to the surface as of yet, it was still a pretty amazing discovery for the local people of Lake Superior, as the story had developed into something of a myth over the last 100 years. Bugatti Type 22. Now let's travel to the Italian-Swiss border, where a 1925 Bugatti Type 22 Brescia Roadster was lifted from the water after 75 years submerged. As the story goes, the Bugatti had belonged to a Grand Prix driver, Rhian Dreyfus, who supposedly lost it in a drunken poker match to a Swiss man in Paris in 1934. On his way home with his new car, the Swiss man was unable to pay the import duties at the Swiss border. Instead of paying the import costs, the Swiss man chose to walk away and leave the Swiss border officials with his prize. So, what did they do with it? Because it wasn't an important model car, they rolled the Bugatti straight into Lake Maggiore, and there it rested under 173 feet, 53 meters of water until it was brought to the surface just recently in 2009 for an honorable reason. In 2008, a local boy was killed at a street fair, so a foundation was established in the victim's name to combat youth violence. The local diving club elected to raise the sunken Bugatti and donate the proceeds to the foundation, and the Type 22 emerged from the lake in July of 2009. Even though one part of the car is still at the bottom of the lake, it was suitably prepped and sold for around $370,000. The buyer was Peter Mullen, the founder of the Mullen Automotive Museum in Oxnard, California. Today, the Bugatti is located in its own room, walled off from the rest of the collection. Its room is designed to replicate the sensation of being underwater in the lake, with the minimal light levels of its bottom, helping a viewer concentrate on the details that make this car an actual must-see work of art. Thanks for watching. Which of these underwater vehicles did you find the most intriguing? Have you ever found a cool object under the water? Hi everybody! From whips that weigh just around 3 ounces to guns that you can hide as a cell phone, here are 10 of the craziest miniature tools and weapons. Yellow Jacket. The Yellow Jacket is an actual iPhone case that has a secret alter ego. It doubles as a stun gun. This will definitely take aggressors by surprise. No one will ever be able to guess that your iPhone could knock them out, and no one will bat an eye either. It also works as a charger, so if you're already in the market for one of those, then you're in luck. It comes in a few colors, and it can administer a number of stunning blows on a single charge. Since it wraps around your phone, it's easily holdable in your hand, and you'll be able to easily access the stunning ability when the situation really requires it. And it definitely looks like a phone case. You can use this to administer somewhere around 50 zaps on a single charge. The new models also have a nifty feature. They reserve a bit of battery life just in case you need it. The company that makes them is also working on different weapons that you can attach to the case, so stay tuned for more info in the future. Cell phone pistol. Maybe a phone case isn't your thing. What other options do you have? Well, gunmaker Ideal Conceal has been working on a particularly concealed pistol that has the gun world abuzz.
Their double-barreled .380 caliber doesn't look like a gun at all when it's folded up. Instead, it looks like a cell phone in an indiscriminate case. However, with the push of a single button, this thing will fold itself out and turn into a fully fledged pistol. This thing hides itself in clear view. Everyone has a smartphone, so no attackers are going to guess that you're packing heat if they think you've got just a phone clip to your belt or even in your pocket. Its dimensions almost exactly match most regular smartphones on the market today, even though it's definitely heavier. That means that you can travel as you please without having to worry about danger around the corner. You'll be prepared. It's also pretty sleek to boot. Built in one frame, it unfolds with ease and is accurate all in one package. I'd bet that in the future, we're about to start seeing a lot more concealed weapons like this. And now for number 8, but first be sure to subscribe and let me know which one you would want to have in the comments below. Defender Ring. If you want to stay fashionable and safe at the same time, then the Defender Ring is the thing for you. The Defender Ring is a self-defense ring, which means that it can be used as a weapon in bad situations. However, most of these rings are ugly and take up too much space, an obvious sign to attackers. But the Defender Ring just looks like a regular ring, so they'll never see it coming when you have this thing. This ring is even pretty stylish. You can get it as a sphere, flower, or sandblast, but all of them have one thing in common. When you take the head off of it, it reveals a sharp dagger-like point underneath that you can use to defend yourself. And you just can't beat the convenience of this thing. There's no fumbling around in your bag. Instead, you literally have the means to defend yourself at your fingertips. The company that makes these things is making more designs soon, so you can continue to stay safe while staying fashionable. Have you ever seen or used a self-defense ring before? Tell me about it in the comments. Atomic Bear SWAT Tactical Pen. You never know when danger is going to arise, so it will probably do you some good to keep a self-defense tool on you at all times. That's what makes the Atomic Bear SWAT Tactical Pen such a lifesaver in dangerous situations. First off, this is not like carrying around a gun or a knife. Instead, when you're safe, you can use this thing as a regular pen without having to worry about freaking everyone around you out. But when danger comes knocking, this thing kicks into full gear. The head of this pen is made out of tungsten carbide, the same stuff used in armor-piercing bullets, and Atomic Bear claims that it can even crush the window of a car in 2 seconds flat. Given this pen's strength, assailants are not going to be happy that they messed with you. The body of this pen is made out of non-rusting aluminum and it's super easy to handle. It's no sweat to switch between writing and defending yourself. People even say that it's a fantastic pen all on its own, so if you need something that you can use to defend yourself, I would definitely try to get my hands on this. Taser Pulse Plus. Everybody knows about the taser gun. It's one of the most effective non-lethal weapons in the world. But have you ever heard about the Taser Pulse Plus? Because the Pulse Plus is definitely the future of self-defense. Not only is it a taser gun, but it's got a ton of new technology in it to boot. It can be shot from up to 15 feet away, and it's only 8 ounces. But the crazier thing is that it works together with an app called Noonlight. Anytime that you have to shoot your Pulse Plus, Noonlight is staffed 24/7 with employees who will send police or emergency responders to your area. That means that you're not alone whenever you have to use this. Moreover, the Pulse Plus is designed to administer a shock even if it only barely touches your attacker, so you don't have to fret about aiming with perfection in order to get the best out of this weapon. It's definitely the next big step in safety. Instafire. Instafire is a product that is intended to help its users start fires, and it comes in tiny packages. The average package of materials comes in a 1.75 ounce baggie. Fire has captivated humanity ever since its discovery, and Instafire brings that sense of wonder into the contemporary world. Where the iPhone puts the power of the interest into your palms, Instafire puts the power of instant fire into your hands. Instafire burns easily due to its constitution. It consists of a number of flammable materials such as paraffin wax, volcanic rock, and, you guessed it, tiny bits of wood. It doesn't light on its own though, you'll need a match for that. But Instafire ensures that once you light it up, you'll be able to have a ripping fire in no time. First, you create a square of logs and put the Instafire in the middle, then put a flame to it. After that, you just add tinier pieces of wood on top, then add logs to your heart's content. Instafire ensures an easy way to start a fire every time, and it's easy to carry with you. Mini revolvers. It might be hard to believe, but there are miniature guns out there that are fully functional guns, even though they can weigh just a fraction of a regular one. As it turns out, firearms company North American Arms specializes in these kinds of guns, and they have an entire lineup that you can choose from. Called mouse guns for their miniature nature, these guns are perfect for those who need something small enough to fit into your pocket. Crazily enough, when these guns don't have any rounds inside of them, they can weigh a mere 6 ounces. Their mini revolvers are probably their most popular option, and they come in a few flavors: 22 short, 22 long, 22 Winchester Magnum, and a 22 black powder. Each of these firearms is a unique version of their larger cousins. Take a look at the 22 LR, which while tiny on its own, can fold into itself to make it even safer and more compact. Reviewers agree that there is something special about North American Arms' lineup of tiny guns. Just imagine having a 22 Magnum that could fit inside of your pocket no problem. Have you ever seen any of these guns in real life? Tell me about it in the comments. Tiger Lady. The Tiger Lady is an inventive new kind of brass knuckle that's intended to be used by women to fend off attackers. Although it's pretty new on the scene, it was actually patented in 1978, but the clever thing about these brass knuckles is that they have a number of sharp claws inside of them that come out of the tool whenever you make a fist, so you can run around with these things and then make a fist when you need them the most. Obviously, this tool is incredibly useful, and it's also easy to manage. The tool itself hangs onto your wrist with a strap. If you need to use it, press your fingers down on them and then you can scratch whoever is coming towards you. They definitely will disorient your attackers, and they're difficult to defend against, so if you're looking for a way to stay safe on a jog, this may be the tool for you. Bullwrap 100. The Bullwrap 100 is a miniature handheld device which is like a gun that can shoot a tiny lasso at assailants. Some have called them remote handcuffs, and that's a fitting name. The way that this thing works is that it shoots a tether made out of Kevlar at somewhere around 280 feet per second. Whenever it leaves the gun, it spreads out horizontally, making it big enough to wrap around the target a few times over, rendering them immobile. This is an excellent form of non-lethal restraint, and because of that, it's become increasingly popular with law enforcement. It means that they can subdue their targets without having to threaten them with a real gun, and it's super easy to use. It's only about as big as a remote, and it has a safety to prevent accidental shooting. It even has a laser pointer to make it easier to aim, and it's effective at a maximum of 25 feet, which is perfect for officers handling close quarter scenarios. They're about $800, so you can get one of these for yourself if you're interested. Given its range, it would be helpful for preventing attackers getting to you. Fast Strike Whip. It would be useful to have a whip that you could carry around to defend yourself, but whips can get incredibly bulky. Until now. Fast Strike is a company that designs self-defense weapons that are meant to be deployed fast, and their whip is a perfect example of that philosophy. Fast Strike's whip is not very long, because carrying around a super long whip is not realistic, but it's around 13 inches long, which is the perfect length, especially when you can coil it around your pants and quickly reach for it when in harm's way. The whip itself also has a tip made of steel that can do some serious damage from a distance. In fact, even the length of the whip is made from stainless steel cable, so it's powerful while remaining pliable. Since the tip of the whip is made of steel, if you use the whip quickly and correctly, you can put a lot of force behind the steel and send your attackers running. Fast Strike claims that if you use this correctly, a flick of the wrist is all you need to really damage your attacker, but for maximum force, you need to put your shoulder into it. If you get one of these, aiming at the neck or face region is going to be your best bet. Moreover, since it's so tiny, it's very hard to grab. Thanks again for watching, everyone. What tool do you think would be the most useful in real life? Tell me about it in the comments. Hi everybody! From animals that we've been looking for years to gigantic deep-sea creatures that seem to pop up from nowhere, here are 10 of the weirdest creatures spotted on Google Earth. New hominid species. Google Earth helped a group of scientists discover an entirely new species of hominids. In 2007, Dr. Lee Berger was pursuing Google Earth in the hopes of mapping new caves in the cradle of humankind, which is home to some of the biggest anthropological discoveries ever, including a ton of fossils of our ancestors. The images he messed with on Google Earth helped him find where some of these caves were. Whenever they arrived at the site of the caves, Berger's son found a set of ancient bones. A year later, they found further bones from the very same person. As it turns out, these bones came from a species that had not been discovered until Berger's son came upon them by accident. Now referred to as Australopithecus sediba, these hominids lived somewhere around 2 million years ago when humans were starting to come into existence. This species walked upright and had human features, but they had arms that were more like apes. Using these, they were able to climb through trees. However, they didn't have the brain power that humans have. They might be an ancestor of Homo erectus. It's pretty crazy to think that a discovery of this magnitude could have started by playing around on Google Earth. Giant centipede. Scotland might just be a hub for secret creatures. For one thing, they're well known to be the home of the Loch Ness Monster, but recently, one Google Earth image appeared to show an even crazier sight in Scottish waters, an apparently 360-foot-long centipede underneath the water. If this were real, then it would be a monumental discovery. The biggest centipede currently on record is the Peruvian giant yellow-leg centipede, which only gets to around 10 inches long. Naturally, people were pretty shocked to see this image, and the debate raged on for a while. Some claimed that it was real, because what else could be going on underneath those waters to cause that image? But others think that it is probably fake. It's more likely to be a shadow, or just something wrong with Google Earth's cameras. Given that scientists haven't come out and said that the longest centipede is actually 360 feet long as opposed to 10 inches, it's safe to say it's fake. However, it's still a mystery what was going on in that photo. And now for number 8, but first be sure to subscribe to Talltanic if you are new here. Ningen. In 2007, a Japanese paranormal outlet posted a picture that they'd retrieved from Google Earth of what appeared to be a ningen in the flesh, right around Namibia's coast. A ningen is a humanoid creature that hangs out in the waters of Antarctica, according to Japanese myths. They're a lot like us. Ningen means human, with 2 eyes, the same kinds of hands, but they're also alleged to have tails like mermaids. If this picture is accurate, then the ningen could be about our size or even bigger, and other sightings have varied as to how big the ningen they saw were. Some have even reported that they can get up to 90 feet long. One sighting a few years back by a Japanese ship showed an alleged ningen around Antarctica. They're typically only spotted around very cold waters, and even then, only at night. Who knows for sure whether or not the ningen is real, but it has yet to be debunked, so it's definitely something to think about. Loch Ness Monster. One man from Nottingham, England, named Jason Cook, claims to have discovered the Loch Ness Monster on Google Earth. The Loch Ness Monster has been one of the most highly sought-after creatures on Earth, and every year more and more people come out of the woodwork to claim that they've seen it. But rarely do people come out and say that they found it on Google Earth. Apparently, these folks didn't even need to leave their house. Take a look at these pictures for yourself. You can see that it doesn't look much like what we'd expect the Loch Ness Monster to look like. In fact, it looks a lot like a boat, but no one knows for sure. Maybe the Loch Ness is just a big white creature rather than a black one. Google Earth has shot down the idea that their application has made big discoveries. For instance, when someone claimed to have found Atlantis through Google Earth a few years back, they explained that it was incorrect. But in this case, they've only said that they can't say for certain whether or not this is the Loch Ness Monster. So maybe time will tell if the Loch Ness actually looks different than we previously thought. Lost Forest. Thanks to images from Google Earth, scientists were able to discover a massive rainforest masked from plain sight inside of Mount Lico, a volcano in Mozambique. You'd think that this is the kind of thing that we would have known about for a long time, but it took serious technological advances in order to make this crazy possibility a reality. It's a world that's been separated from ours for millennia. In fact, it's actually the second time that scientists have discovered rainforests separated from the world due to Google Earth. It happened once before, around 2005, when Dr. Julian Bayliss discovered one inside of Mount Mebu in the same region because of Google Earth images. So Bayliss was naturally pretty excited when their team discovered yet another rainforest. On this new journey into Lico, they've already gotten their money's worth in the form of new kinds of butterflies and an entirely new kind of mouse. They definitely found weird things in Mebu, like the ghost slug, but because Lico is even more isolated, they have high hopes that they'll find crazy things here. Kraken in Antarctica. For ages, Norse mythology has spoken about the existence of the Kraken, which is pretty much a humongous squid that could tear passing sailors apart. It might seem mythical, but some recent images from Google Earth have brought this myth back into the real world. Take a look at these astounding pictures, which conspiracy theorists are claiming show that there is a huge kraken lurking out there around Deception Island in the Antarctic waters. If these images are accurate and do indeed depict a squid, then it would have to be around 360 feet long. Can you even imagine a squid that's bigger than a football field? What's more, it looks like it's making quite a stir in those waters, stirring up the surface of the water as if it's saying, "I'm here, I'm real, get used to it." However, this photo was debunked pretty soon after the conspiracy theorists started circling around it. The coast off of Deception Island is renowned for its rocky terrain, and researchers have identified this rock as Sail Rock. It matches up with the maps of the area, so there's probably no kraken in these waters, but it definitely looks like it. Corfu Island Sea Monster. It's not every day that you discover a sea monster while you're on a cruise, but that might be exactly what happened for Harvey Robertson, whose picture of a seemingly mythical creature has been making the rounds on social media. While he was sailing with his family on a cruise around Parga, one of the Greek islands, he thought the color of the water was beautiful. However, when he took another look at the photo, he was stunned. The photo shows a picture of what appears to be a gigantic manatee-like creature. In one picture, the creature seems to be jumping out, and then in the next, it's jumping back in. Of course, this caused quite a stir among animal experts who claim that it was everything from a whale to the strange offspring between crocodiles and hippos. However, most people think that there is a much simpler explanation. Dr. Darren Naish, for example, contends that the creature is actually just a piece of a fender that broke off from a boat sailing through the water. While this is entirely plausible, it is still only a theory, so there may yet be something out there in those waters. Crabzilla. In 2014, the Sunday Express posted a story about the presence of a large crab inside of the shallow water directly off a pier in Whitstable. It was sent to them by Quentin Winter off the website Weird Whitstable. Quentin thought it was just sand at first, but then he said that he thought he'd seen it when he visited Whitstable the summer prior. He recounted the incident in pretty terrifying detail. If the picture is accurate, then the crab would have to be somewhere around 50 feet long. That's 38 feet longer than the Japanese spider crab, which is regarded worldwide as the biggest crab out there. However, Paul Clark, a crab expert at the Natural History Museum in London, has looked at the pictures and he determined that they were fake. He said it was clearly a shore crab that was photoshopped beyond its, at most, 2-inch length. Plus, the photo came from a Bing Maps photo without a crab. I mean, what do you think? Let me know. Bigfoot is arguably the most sought-after mysterious creature known to man. Do you believe Bigfoot is out there? A Canadian in British Columbia claims to have evidence of his existence. The video was posted by Wow For Real, a YouTuber who is an extensive paranormal researcher. He claims to have located Bigfoot somewhere in British Columbia along the Trans-Canada Highway. You can check out his video for yourself, which contains a number of Google Earth images as evidence. Bigfoot has been a mystery for over 100 years, even before the term Bigfoot was in common usage. It is a common practice for cultures to have some kind of myth concerning the existence of anthropomorphic giants lurking in the woods. Some of them claim that Bigfoot is a cannibal, or that it's nocturnal, or that they would carry children away. But today, the Bigfoot legend is known for the conspiracies that it inspires. So Wow For Real does have some pretty good picture evidence for Bigfoot, but who knows? Some commenters have decried the video, claiming that it's just a tree stump or some other forest object, but we may never know for sure. Until then, the mystery stays alive. Mysterious creature in New Zealand. In 2014, one New Zealand engineer named Peter Whitehira was traveling around Oke Bay just off the east coast of the North Island of New Zealand when he claimed to have spotted a giant wake in the water. But nothing was found. And now if you look at Google Earth, you can see for yourself that there was clearly a large disturbance inside of the water. He was only looking for a place to build his vacation home, but he might have uncovered a deep mystery. Whitehira claimed that this water disturbance could indicate the existence of a large creature swimming underneath. Based on the size of the wake captured by Google Earth, this creature would have to be somewhere around 36 feet long. This puts whales in the running, but from the length of the wake, we also know that it couldn't be a whale because it was moving way too quickly. Maybe it was a boat? Whitehira says otherwise because there's no indication of the kind of white froth that boats leave in their wake. Others have said that it's just the trunk of a tree floating in the water. Maybe, but maybe not. It definitely looks like there's something under the water to me, but you be the judge. Thanks to everyone for watching. Do you think that any of these are fake? Tell me your theories in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up for more. See you next time!